Hello and welcome back to Retfurb. So on today's video we got this set of Bowers and Wilkins 560 speakers that are looking rather scruffy, as you can see in the images at the moment. So there's quite a few chunks missing on the main cabinet, on the corners. You'll see in a minute that behind the actual dust covers, one of the cones, the centre dust cover part, is damaged. The front panels do have a bit of scuffing, and around the mounting for the dust cover, you'll see there it's all sort of chewed up. So I'm going to be looking at that and trying to sort that out. But yeah, just generally tatty from use, obviously being moved around a bit and knocked about in the process. So we're just going to go for them, give them a good clean up and get them back to looking as good as possible. So let's get straight into the video now and see what we can do. So first off, just checking the function of the speakers, and as you can see they sound all okay. There was a bit of a vibration on one of them because the front cover piece, which you'll see I'm holding there, was loose, so it was causing a vibration when the bass was turned up. But other than that, they sound really good and absolutely fine, no issues with the tweeters or the actual drivers. So now moving straight into the refurb, just to remove the dust cover, and then we can move the front panel off of the speaker housing. This is held on by 6 main screws that you'll see on the front face. The small tweeter is held in by 4 screws, and there's also another 2 screws behind the main driver which hold the main cover onto the actual enclosure. And then removing the trim that goes over the driver, and then we can go around moving the screws that hold that in place. And just levering the driver out and pulling the wires out the back of it, just remembering which way round they go. And then just to lift out the tweeter. And now we can look at removing the rest of the screws to get the front panel off. So I'm just showing here, there's some scuffs on those sort of pleated sort of finish on the front panel. Now I was thinking about putting some body filler on there and then trying to sand it out and getting the grooves back, but I sort of went against that idea because obviously it's going to be quite hard to get nice straight pleats in the front panel again. So I thought instead I would just sort of carve it out a little bit with a screwdriver and then go over with the sandpaper just on the edge of the sandpaper, trying to get the shape back as much as possible. Now it won't be 100% perfect, but I'm just trying my best to make it look more presentable, and once it's been refinished and it's had another coat of the grey on top, it will make it look a lot more uniform. Now, like I say, it won't be perfect, but it will look a lot less chewed up than what it does at the moment. And now just onto the other side again, just doing the same thing and just going over some of the edges with the sandpaper. And then I will go over with some finer sandpaper because obviously this will leave some scratches on it, which you don't want once you go over the grey finish. So now just going on to spray the front panel. I've got some grey anthracite aerosol. I've gone over a bit of primer first, just to prime up the bare plastic, and now I'm just going to put a dust coat of the grey over first, and then I can start building up the coats. And in between the coats, I just use the heat gun gently to dry it off. You see it sort of cuts, and that's just me using the heat gun, and then coming back again, and then giving it another coat over the top with the anthracite grey. So it's not an exact match grey, but it is quite close. You'll see in a minute, once I've done the finish coat on this one, I'll put it up against the other one, which was done afterwards, but just so you can see the difference. So you can see there, the one on the right of the screen is one that I've done, and the one on the left hasn't been sprayed yet. But obviously it just looks a lot more uniform, a lot cleaner now. You can sort of see where the damage was on there if you look carefully. But like I say, you won't get rid of it 100%, but it'll just look a lot more uniform in colour and a lot better than what I did previously. So I thought at this point I'll just put the tweeter back in place, because that can just be fitted and sort of plugged in with the front panel at the same time. And now moving on to the speaker cone itself. So now this was quite tricky to get off. I was really careful to go around not damaging the actual paper cone. But it is really hard because some of it was stuck really well, and you'll see some of it wasn't. Obviously it had to come off to be replaced. So you just need to sort of go around very carefully not to damage anything. Just taking your time around there, just separating the adhesive from the actual cone. And now that's removed, I'm just trying on the new dust cover, so that covers over any of the old damage from the other part perfectly. And now I'm just going to use the spray contact adhesive, just put that into the cap, and then use the end of the brush just to sort of dab it round the new replacement dust cover. I find it a lot better to do it like this. Obviously if you tried to spray it on it, it'd just go everywhere, so this is a lot more accurate, and just giving it a couple of coats, just sort of go around twice with it, build it up a bit, and that tends to hold it really well. So now just placing that dust cover in place. Obviously you need to be fairly accurate when you do this. If you drop it on in the wrong place, you know, you'll get glue everywhere. So you'll see a little bit of glue around the edges, which I'm just sort of wiping over my finger carefully. Again, being careful when you do that, because you run the risk of pulling off any of the paper. But now I've got some fabric dye that I'm just going to go around and dye the cone, just get it back to a nice darker colour. I think probably from original it was a bit darker, it's faded over time. And then just sort of go over it and make it more uniform. I put a couple of coats on this to make it more of a uniform colour and not look so patchy. Obviously when you look at it here, there's bits that are wetter and drier than other bits, so you just need to keep going around it. You don't want to get it too soaking wet at once, because you run the risk of damaging the paper. But as you can see there, it's come out pretty well. So now moving on to the box. At this stage I've used some body filler and gone around and filled in any of the digs and scratches and scuffs. And on the underside of the box there's quite a few holes, and there's my dog making a cameo. So yeah, just going around now, just rubbing down the filler, getting it nice and square. Obviously you can spend ages and ages trying to get it square and squarer, but we're going to be covering it with the black wood finish sticky back plastic anyway, which will hide a lot of stuff, but you need to prep the surface fairly well for it to go on and stick properly. And I've just dusted over a bit of black over that filler before I'm putting this sticky back plastic on top, just to help it stick better. So what I'm going to do with this, you'll see that I'm just cutting the side piece, but I actually do the top and the bottom first, lap it over the sides, and then when you come to do the side piece, then you can butt it up against it, so it's sort of overlapping slightly, so then you have no risk of any of the corners or the edges showing through, because it's lapped over the sides. You can see there I'm just trimming it, and it just folds over that edge, and then when we do the side piece, that will come up over the top of that by a couple of mil and hide any edges. So just carefully removing that bit that I've trimmed. So you can see there that the piece is done. I've done the top and the bottom, and now I'm sticking the side piece on and just lining it up with the front first, making sure I've got enough at the top and the bottom when I come to trim it, but just making sure that it lips over enough. Obviously you don't need to make sure that this is perfectly on the edge of the front, because it is hidden by the trim anyway. So yeah, I'm just sort of smoothing it on now, pulling it taut, and then once I've got it taut I can lap it over the back edge. And now I can just go with a applicator card and just squeegee it down and make sure it's stuck down properly. And now onto the back edge, just pulling that down tight again over the edge. Obviously you don't want to go too mad and pull it too tight and potentially rip it, but you need to be sort of fairly taut. You don't want it lifting up on the edges after it's done. now just making sure it's all nice and tight on that edge and just going over a blade and trimming it, all the excess off. And now just trimming those side pieces up to top, which then finishes it off nicely. So I did this process exactly the same on another set of speakers that I did recently on the channel, and I actually have another set of Wharfdale XP2, I think they're off the top of my head, that I've got to do, which I'm going to be doing the wood finish again like I did on another set of speakers. It's just an easy, quick way to tidy up a rubby looking set of speakers, and at the end of the day, all it was originally on these was a laminate, so it wasn't real wood anyway. So it's not like I've just put this imitation look over the top of real wood. It was an imitation laminate which was on the chipboard anyway, so you're not really doing anything different than what was there previously. So now that's all done, we can look at putting the front panel back in place. So just putting that foam absorber in behind the main front panel before we fit that back on, and then we can start screwing it back down in place. And now just plug in the tweeter back in. I think I'm struggling a little bit here to line it up properly. And now the driver. And now screwing the driver back down. So you can see this one's starting to come together now. Now I'm not going to show the process for the other speaker, it's obviously exactly the same as this one, but you can see just this, sort of work that I've done on this, which it's taken a bit of time, but it's not loads of time, and it just makes them look so much nicer. They look pretty much new just doing this. Obviously I've got to do the dust panel that goes on the front of the speaker as well. I'm going to be recovering that shortly on the video. But you can just see here, look just how good that looks. Now moving on to the dust cover. So you can see there's quite a few tears and rips on this. So I've got a new piece of the material to go on here. But first of all, we need to remove this old bit. So I just found it easier to go around with a blade and just cut it all around the outside. And then you can pull that old piece of material off. And now the small little badge, you've got to prise off, just being very careful because it's glued down. So this has got to be prised off, and I'm just trimming some of the excess material that was stuck on there, and then it's ready to be stuck back on when the new material is on there. And this frame's broke, so I'm just going to use a method which I use fairly regularly for repairing plastics. So super glue, bicarbonate of soda. Just try not to build it up too much. I don't want to be too lumpy through the new material, but I'm just going over a bit of bicarb. And that will just act as a bit of a cement and hold that in place, and it will bridge that damage that was on there, and it should hold it pretty well. And just building it up a bit more. If you've ever done this method before, you'll know just how hard this repair goes. It's like really hard cement when it goes off. And just doing a little bit on the other side with the crack. And now we can look at getting the new material fitted. So just trimming it before I start sticking it down. So this material is not exactly the same as what was on there, but it will still achieve the same look. Now just going over the spray glue very carefully all around the edges. And then just wiping off any excess, which I don't actually show on here, but wiping that off a bit before we go any further. And then we can start sticking this material back on. So getting one end stuck first. And then once that end's stuck, you can then flip it round and then pull the other end and stick that down as well. So when you're doing that, you want to obviously put it under a bit of tension. You don't want it to be going like too tight, but it needs to be tight enough that when you sort of press on the outside that it just springs back out. And then just working around the sides, doing exactly the same thing as what we did on the top and the bottom. And the most difficult part of this is the corners. So once they're stuck, the sides, then you need to go around all the corners and just pull them in from the top and the side, so it leaves less of a crease, and then stick that down. So that's just what I'm doing here. So just carefully like pulling one side and pulling the top down and then sticking it down at the same time. And then now we can go around with the blade and just trim off all the excess material inside. So any of this glue that's on there, it will dry off within a couple of days anyway. It won't be tacky, but you can sort of try and wipe off as much as you can, or you could mask it to stop that sort of overspray. And now we'll get into the finishing bits on the speaker, and then we can give it a quick test and just make sure it sounds okay. So as you can see, they come out really well, they sound really good. Obviously it's difficult to hear through your system because it might be totally different. So, you know, it's not an accurate presentation of what they actually sound like, but they sound really good. There's no vibration through them now. They look really good. Like I say, you can see a little bit of the damage still on the front panel, but it's a hell of a lot better. It actually looks a bit worse in the video than what it does when you're actually physically with it. So yeah, I'm really happy with it, really happy with how they came out. I'm now toying with the idea of keeping these with this system that you see them with. I had a set of Bowers and Wilkins 601 S3s connected up to it, which I absolutely love, and these do sound very similar to that, so I quite like the style of them, a little bit older looking, sort of late 80s look to them, and I think they match the system a little bit more because the height of them are bigger than the 601, so I might actually keep them. Let me know what you think. Thanks for taking the time to watch the video, it's really appreciated. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.